Yo, what's up? Tom Embley back with another podcast. Fourth episode today, I believe. And today I want to talk about anxiety at most. The biggest thing I want to talk about today is anxiety. And what I want to get into with anxiety is the spotlight effect and how we spend so much time thinking that other people are emotionally, physically, mentally, spiritually invested in us, and how this stops us from doing the things that we want to do, genuinely want to do. I find on a consistent basis in my life that the actions that I partake in have a heavy influence of, I wonder what that person is going to think of me for doing this. And this extends to the point in which even doing something that is a defiant act against I don't care, I'm not going to care what people think, has a, I'm doing it because I know people will be aware of, that's a bit strange. It's there's this weird thing where pretty much everything I do has something attached to it of, I wonder what someone's going to look at me and think about. And this is a problem in society at large. I know a number of people that struggle with the exact same issue, and it's just one of those things. We're all aware of the fact that it's the worst kept secret that we all are very insecure, and our world at large is full of people who are scared and uncomfortable with how other people perceive them. So let's dispel the illusion today. What I'm not going to do with what I'm about to say is I'm not going to use this as a platform for advice, because I honestly feel as though a attempt at advice is entirely futile when it comes to this sort of thing, because I think you have to experience it yourself and work out what works for you. That being said, I am going to go through some things that work for me, and I'm going to go through what I think is the case and how to get around it. Right, I find, as I say, that my biggest difficulty is just that large, to be honest, is how other people perceive me. I am a very anxiety-riddled person, and that anxiety stems almost entirely from how I think other people are going to look at me. Now, this is something that has been thrown about on such a consistent basis, of this idea that we're all so invested in how other people look at us that we forget to realise that nobody is looking at us because everyone else is in the same place. But that's all well and good saying that, but like much of the advice that comes out around topics like these, it's not actually practical. You can't take that anywhere. You can be, and this is the thing with anxiety, you can be perfectly aware of the irrationality and the stupidity of your acts and still do them. It's not a case, and this is something that I try my best to make clear to people who maybe fortunately do not have any issues with anxiety, is you have no control over the way that you initially feel with regard to anxiety. You cannot change the fact that you're an anxious person at your core. You can learn to be more confident, more comfortable, and thus less anxious. But if you're somebody who is intrinsically wired to be more apprehensive about things and care more about other people's opinions and strive for acceptance, if you're that sort of person, you're kind of going to have to accept that large in part the way that you think is it's a futile effort to try and battle that as much as accommodate it. So rather than pretending like you're not anxious or trying to do all the things that a non-anxious person would do, it is quite helpful to just embrace what it is that you are and use that as a method of power. And what I mean by that is, as somebody who is very anxious and very uncomfortable in large part, when I do something that is quite obviously not what my introverted hermit version would like me to do, I can put that against what I would have liked to do in terms of what would have been comfortable, and I can use that as leverage for next time. So what I mean by that is I can look at, say for example, going over to a woman and speaking to her, and I can look at that and I can go, oh mate, well done for doing that, because I know you really don't like doing that and I know it's something you're scared of doing, but you did it anyway, well done. And just touching on something that I said earlier about whether people are or aren't lucky to not have anxiety, what I mean by that is, with the example at hand, I feel though as though the growth that I am capable of as a result of my anxiety is greater than somebody who isn't anxious. And that's because the things I have to do, or that you have to do, yeah, let's not make this all about me. All of the when you do something that is outside of your comfort zone and that you're scared of doing, and you know you're aware of the fact that you were terrified of going and doing this thing and yet you did it anyway, when you do that, you can say that to yourself. You can say, look what I did, well done mate, I knew I was scared to do that and I went to do it anyway. If you're somebody who isn't anxiety riddled, you don't get that. You just go, well, I'm gonna go over and speak to him, and that's cool. You know, that's not a impediment as such. It's just a unique angle of looking at things that, in some ways, being anxious and being uncomfortable is actually a gift of sorts, because it opens you up to that much more growth, because you have to move past that. You can't stay in that position. As I say, I've got a good friend of mine who doesn't understand the concept of anxiety, he just doesn't get anxiety. And for him, he can go and do something and he might be pleased at the thing he's done, but there's not at least in my opinion, there's not I conquered my weakness, I waged war against my discomfort and I won. That doesn't come with it. And if you're someone who's anxious, of course, that does come with it, because you look at it on the basis of, fucking hell, I can't believe that I got that done. So, first things first, accept if you are someone who is anxious. Don't try and fight that. Accept that you are the sort of person who gets uncomfortable with things, because this isn't a lie down and let it be sort of acceptance. This is a be aware of what it is that you are, so that when you are not like that, you can congratulate yourself. When you're somebody who is anxious and then you do something that a bold person would do, you rewrite the script and you can tell yourself, irrespective of how I feel, I'm a fucking champ because I went and did something that I was scared of doing. Which brings us on to the next point. Go and do things that you're scared of doing. That is it's the panacea, the silver bullet method for anxiety, is just going straight fucking head on. No prisoners, just fucking gas, straight forward. Because anxiety is a fucking bastard, man. It's one of those things that if you don't wage war against it, if you don't declare all out war against your anxiety, it will take you. It will take you over, and that is not something that is easy to get around and navigate. And the annoying part is, the longer that you put off the challenging of your anxieties, the harder it is to challenge them, which is why people don't challenge them, because it gets harder and harder and harder and harder and harder until it's almost impossible. You'll get someone who just can't bring themselves to do it because it's that uncomfortable. So the only method around that, and as I say, it is fucking annoying because it's so uncomfortable, but the only method around it is through it. You cannot bypass the process of, I'm uncomfortable doing this thing, I need to go and do it. And that is the best mindset you can possibly get in with this. Honestly, if you take anything away from anything I ever do, get the idea of, I'm scared of doing this, let's go do it now, go do it now. Get that into your head, because that is unbelievable. If you can register in your head that something is going to be uncomfortable for you to do and then do it straight away. That's brilliant. And the example that I'll put forth is this. Say, for example, you are in the gym, and no, I tell a lie. I'm not going to use that one because that might not be applicable for everyone. You want to go and talk to a girl, and you're scared of talking to this girl, and rather than sitting there and waiting and thinking, oh, I really want to talk to her, but I'm so uncomfortable to talk to her, and what if it goes wrong, and going through all of that, rather than doing that, the minute you get the thought, go. And that's the thing. You can't give this any... It has to be that way. If you want to get through anxiety and do things that you know you should do, you have to get good at going, oh, I should probably do that. Go do it. And get that quick bang. We're gone. We're going and doing what we're doing. Cultivating that is unbelievable, because that is 90% of the war with anxiety is the first move. It's going and doing what it is that you're uncomfortable about, not actually doing it. Because I've spoken about this before. With anxiety, it isn't really so much what you're doing as the... Anxiety is basically just a prediction, a negative, pessimistic prediction of what's going to happen, which means when you go into something and you are now in the midst of said anxiety-inducing event, the illusion is dispelled because you're there now. So the anxiety can't do the same thing. It's just not capable of writing those same depraved, uncomfortable stories. It just can't do it now because you're there. It's reality. That's the thing. Anxiety is just a prediction. It's this is what I think will happen. And with that in mind, when you go and do something, it can't do that anymore because it knows what's happening now. You can't be in front of a girl, talking to a girl, and go, oh, what if she doesn't like me? What if she doesn't like me? Whilst you're in front of her and she obviously likes you. It's not possible. So going and doing something about it works. And let's take a pessimistic view for a second. Say, with the girl example, you were to go over to someone and you were worried that, it might not go so well, and then it's not going well. Even then, it's not the same. Your anxiety will not go, oh, what if she does? The next problem that you have to come over is your mind might say, I told you so. And with that, that's where you have to get out of this mindset of being results-based. In the sense that, with anxiety, if you're scared of doing something, the war and the real growth is in you doing it, not in you doing it well. It's not going and doing something and fucking smashing it. It's going and doing something in any capacity. Because all the time you're scared and uncomfortable of doing something, the minute you do it, you're onto a winner. You're doing exactly what it was that you were supposed to be doing, at which point you've won. And that is great. What I want to get onto next is not being pleased with the results that you have at any point in time. This is a real issue that can come into play, is when we chase goals and we're looking to improve, we find ourselves in these positions in which no matter what we do, we're not pleased with what we've done. You could do... Your goal could be, say you're an anxious person. Let's run with the anxiety. Say you're an anxious person and you're at the football and you're thinking, oh God, I'm really uncomfortable, but I want to start a chant because I know that I'm going to be uncomfortable and that will get me something. Or you might be, just something, a position in which you're speaking out in public, whether it's in a friend group or at football or, whatever it is, you're speaking out. When you do that, there can be this trap that you fall into in which you said you would do it once and then you kind of get stuck on the feeling when you do it. You realise, oh my God, I actually did it. I did it. And then you go, I could do it again. And when you do that, your mind then becomes dissatisfied with what it is that you've done. And the trap that you can fall into is, say for example, you wanted to start a chant at football, and you start one chant, your brain goes, could do another one. If you don't do that one, then your brain goes, oh, you're being a pussy. You're being a pussy. You're letting the weakness win again. I fucking knew you were weak. Your brain then does that. It can't go, well, fucking hell, hang on. The goal was done. We've smashed the goal. The goal's good. Your brain can then go, yeah, but. And it's this constantly progressing forward mindset. And to my mind, there are two ways to deal with this. The two ways are, number one, act on the impulse. Do what your mind is telling you to do. Because on one front, this may lead to a more consistent version of said problem. You might the efforts might go further. You might end up just doing more and feeling the same feeling, just more. But it's a pretty good way to grow. And that's the thing, is if you're uncomfortable enough that you should put on your to-do list of, if you're uncomfortable enough that something that is a big win for you is going and speaking to someone, if your mind then goes, well, you could go speak to that person as well, you're then doing twice as much as you said you would. And though your mind might be going, oh yeah, you haven't done it for the fourth time now, if you keep doing it because that thought is there, whether it's nice or not, you're going to grow, because you're finding yourselves in positions in which your mind is telling you the same thing it told you before you did it the first time. It's just now you've got experience as well. And as I say, you have to be careful, because you don't want to go flying down the rabbit hole and find that no matter what you do, it's never good enough. But then at that point, as I say, I would err on the side that the more you do, the more you realise who you are. And I think that feeling of constantly chasing something is maybe beneficial in certain circumstances, because as I say, it's going to prompt you to keep doing the thing that you're scared of doing. But as I said, you don't want it to go all the way and all the distance, and all of a sudden nothing is good ever. So how do you get around that? How do you get into a position in which you're comfortable and you're satisfied with what it is that you've done? I would say that the most definite version of this, and the best way of countering this discomfort, is to do things that your brain can't argue with. Your brain cannot argue with you when you do something that is way out there. When you do something that you go, fucking hell, that was big for me. Oh, sorry. When you do that, your brain can't really keep up with those same pessimistic thoughts, because you can kind of just tell it to fuck off. You can kind of reason at that point and go, hang on, mate, fuck off, take a back seat, because I've just done something that I know is really difficult for me to do, so go away. And that's what I mean when I say that doing it slightly, adhering to the pessimism of going, oh, you need to go and do it again, otherwise nothing matters. Adhering to that, in a sense, will kind of bring you to that point, because you're going to go, say your example, the example we remain with is you want to go and talk to a girl. If you go and talk to one girl, and then your mind goes, well, you could talk to two, and then you talk to two, and it happens again, and you get to 4, say, and your mind's doing it still, you can, at that point, you can go, hang on, this is pretty silly, I've done this 4 times now, and I know that I'm scared of doing this, so what's good? Let's sort this out now, because this is not the way that I should be thinking. And that's it, is you can get to a point in which your mind can just go, come on, this is ridiculous. And that's the point to get to, is when your mind consciously recognises that the anxiety is irrational. And that's the difficulty, is when your mind doesn't necessarily, when your mind's acting on the anxiety rather than observing it, it can't see that the anxiety is irrational, even if it is the most irrational thing. You could have a thought where you go, what? Like, that's just stupid. That is not a sensible thought. And when you have that, it's it's hard for your mind to keep up with reality when you're acting on that basis. Your mind doesn't act in the realms of reality. Your mind acts as sorry. Your mind acts on, oh, this is exactly what the truth is. This is what's happening. It doesn't act on what is actually reality. So when you can observe your anxiety and you can look at it from that angle and go, hang on, I've done exactly what I said I'd do and 4 times as much, then you can go, well, let's lay that to bed. And another thing that I would say is, it might sound trivial, but is really helpful with this, is to get these things down in a place where you can use them as evidence. Goggins calls it the cookie jar, and I quite like the cookie jar because it's basically this idea that you keep all the difficult things you've done in a kind of mental space that you can reach into when you have to do another difficult thing, which is a really nice analogy, actually, because you can do this. This is perfectly feasible. You can look at something and go, I was uncomfortable to talk to that girl. I went and spoke to that girl. And then you can take that, and the next time you want to talk to a girl, you can reach into the cookie jar and say, look, you've done this before, you can do this again. And then you have your next experience, at which point you can take that back to the cookie jar, and now you've got 2 things to call upon. So the biggest thing, I think, honestly, with anxiety is just, you have to strike a perfect balance of understanding who it is that you are and understanding your limitations and not letting said limitations define you. I think you have to strike that balance of understanding your discomfort but not letting your discomfort rule you. You can't use your discomfort as an excuse. Fuck. Tired. Sorry about that, boys and girls. You can't use your discomfort as a excuse to not do the things that you're uncomfortable about. You have to use it as fuel to do it anyway. And I'm gonna leave this now because we've got where we wanted to go, and I'm yawning, and that's gonna piss you guys off. So I'm gonna call it there. 25 minutes. I hope sincerely that this has helped anyone who has any of these problems, because that is the ultimate goal of this channel, is to bring some information forth through my experiences that might help someone else. And I hope that I've done that today. Hasta la vista, until next time. Can I do that? Assalamualaikum.